Direct from Foxborough, Massachusetts, the gem of Norfolk County, and taped at the studios of Foxborough Cable Access. It's Foxborough Central. And here's your host, Bob Hickey.
And welcome to another fantastic episode of Foxborough Central. My name is Bob Hickey. I am your host, and I am so pleased that you took a little bit of time to join me and my guests here today as we talk about the people, events, and organizations that make Foxborough truly what? The gem of Norfolk County. Today we are blessed to be honored, pleased to be joined by my friend Bill Stedman. Bill, Bob. Welcome. For those of you who do not know, and I'm sure you do by now, that Bill Stedman is the editor of the Foxboro Reporter, our local award-winning weekly publication that covers all the news that's fit to print here in Foxborough. How about that?
Well, I'm pleased to be here. I'm glad to be on the show and talk a little bit about the newspaper.
Well, you know, and for those of you who know, in the interest of full disclosure, my name is Bob Hickey. I'm also a columnist for the Foxboro Reporter. But that's not why we're here. As you know, this is community service, this is community interest, and what I'm really here to talk about is the importance of the local press. And we see too often people decry, oh, there's no local coverage, or there's not the right local coverage, or there's bias, or there's too much of this or too much of that. But I think what we also have to do is take a step back from that and realize that none of those conversations can happen unless you have the word local in it. We live in Foxborough, so we could get the Providence Journal, we could get the Boston Globe, but we have the Foxboro Reporter, and whether you like it, love it, hate that columnist on page 4, that's me. You know, you don't have to like me, but the important thing is that you have an opportunity to either like me or not like me, or any of the other people that put this together. So maybe we use that as a platform or a springboard to talk about local press.
Local press. It is a local newspaper. It is your newspaper. It's the community's newspaper. It's not my newspaper. It's not Frank or anybody else. We want everybody to be a part of it. We invited Bob to be a part of it, who had a while ago, and we look for anybody's opinions and letters, and it's really, as I say, we want it to be a community newspaper. We're not looking to take one side or the other.
Do you realize that was over 4.5 years ago?
Time is flying. Believe me, I can't believe I've been here 6 or 7 years. I don't even know how many years I've been here.
I was going to ask you.
Since Patriot Place started, I got here just before that.
Okay, well, so, and, for those folks at home, Patriot Place really hasn't been here all that long.
No.
And, the transition that's happened up on Route 1 has been phenomenal for our tax base and really a whole new dynamic as opposed to the parking lots up there. But when it comes to local press, there's a lot of coverage up there. There's still ongoing growth. We'll call it a maturation of the relationship, or there's still a lot of opportunity for, I don't even want to say growth, but there's a lot of opportunity for change up there.
Oh, yeah.
And it's covered in the Foxboro Reporter. And I know that, and I'll say it, I used to be a selectman here in town, and I did not always appreciate the coverage of the Foxboro Reporter. I was probably not the happiest camper on certain occasions, but at the same time, it was important that this be here because I would also write letters. I remember when we were doing the negotiations for Patriot Place, and I felt a need, I was hoping to garner support for the agreement that I negotiated, but I wrote an extensive, long, wordy, long-winded letter to the editor, and you printed it. And I don't think that opportunity is available in every community.
Well, we want that opportunity to be available, and we would rather have people write us letters, tell us what they think, than to be online and just anonymously. We used to have an online presence where we would allow anonymous comments, and we just didn't feel that was productive. If you could, hide behind an anonymous comment and say things, we'd have to be constantly looking to make sure that things weren't. So, we said no to that, but we would love to have more letters than we get. So
write your letters.
So write your letters, tell us your opinions. I have no agenda in terms of one thing or the other. So that my agenda is that it's open to everybody.
So one of the really interesting things, and you just touched on two things. I'll hit the online aspect first. So newspaper industry is changing,
Yes.
and not for the,
Not for the better.
I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the Boston Globe was just purchased by John Henry and a group, and didn't they pay somewhere around 1/6 of what had been paid
Yes,
for it, not
they-
10 years earlier by the New York Times?
Yes.
I don't have,
I don't have the exact
This is a
figures,
free-form program,
but,
folks, as you well know.
nah,
So
No. Basically the cost of the buildings and the materials, pretty much what he paid for it. I mean, I think if he sold everything, he'd
And
get
then-
pretty much his money back.
yeah, and then the piece of that goes. That might not have been noticed is that there's also the online presence. They've got the Boston.com and the BostonGlobe.com, and then there's also the ancillary pieces to that, the advertising. They've got an online car finding
Right.
service and all that sort of thing. So when you mentioned about the Foxborough Reporter and the comments section, that was, my interpretation or my thought is that was a first line attempt to create the social media aspect to the news gathering part. And I think, and I remember when you cut off the comments, it was about 4 years ago, is because they'd gotten to be so vitriolic and so angry and counterproductive, and it really didn't contribute towards any community discussion, which I imagine was the original intent.
Yes, exactly.
I would think Bob Hickey writes a column, people say, well, he made some good points, but these are some things, I disagree with him completely. But it didn't have that type of conversation to it. It really got down to...
And a lot of them were
attacks.
Anonymous. People didn't want to attach their names. And if you have an opinion, you feel strongly about it, I feel you should, attach your name to it.
And the letters of the editor is a great way to do that.
Yeah, exactly. I think, a lot of newspapers jumped into that social news, put it online, put everything online, and run it that way, and the advertising would follow. And it didn't always follow in that particular model, which is why papers like the Globe and others, the Sun Chronicle, have a paywall where some of their content is you have to pay for. I think sometimes people think of newspapers as some sort of nonprofit public service operation. In reality, in order to get quality news gathering, you have to pay people to do it. People, just don't do it for free. And so it is a struggle in terms of trying to keep enough content that's reliable and pay columnists like you to give their reliable opinions.
Well,
to keep the advertising going.
Yeah, and most importantly with a newspaper, it's news gathering, and so you have yourself and a full-time reporter, Frank Mortimer.
Frank
who's
Mortimer,
been there quite a while.
Yes.
And you also have office staff, and you have Christine Niagara-Freeman, who is a photographer, and you have others. I mean, you have a full staff.
Well, compared to what we used to when I started, it's quite a skeleton crew. Basically, when I started, we had a sports editor. We had an office manager, we had a circulation director, we had a reporter, we had our correspondents. Now it's basically Frank and I full-time on the editorial. We have Ruth Jackson, who is invaluable and wonderful as our office manager, and she does everything. We'd be lost without her. And basically now we share resources with our sister newspaper, which is the Sun Chronicle. So Dave Carty does a fabulous job covering Foxborough sports and is always around. But he also has to work for the Sun Chronicle too, so he has to put in a number of hours down there.
Well, let's talk about that. The Sun Chronicle, you call it a sister publication.
Yes.
They are owned by the same company.
Yes, United Communications Corporation of Kenosha, Wisconsin.
There you go. And that has been a long time case.
Yes.
And when did they buy that?
Boy, I didn't do my research.
It definitely predates me.
Yeah, it was before I started at the Sun Chronicle, which is where I started originally, some 26, 27 years ago. I don't know.
It's been...
So it's been a while. They originally bought the Sun Chronicle, and then they picked up the Foxboro Reporter as well. So, and they have been wonderful, wonderful owners. It is a family-owned company. The gentleman, unfortunately, who passed away, Howard Brown, excuse me, we'd call him Uncle Howard. He was a great, and now his daughter owns it, and his children, and it's nice. It's not a big conglomerate. It's not a, huge corporation, so it still has the feel that you get support as journalists.
Good. And the commitment is still strong?
The commitment is
press?
still strong. It's whatever we lose is because of advertising revenue and just making cutbacks to make it work. But in terms of commitment to what we do and, to news gathering and reporting and paying people like Christine, who is another invaluable member, although she's only part-time, to be out there. She's in the schools, she's everywhere, getting stuff. Well, father-daughter dance. Look in this week's paper. It's got some wonderful pictures from the father-daughter dance, and that's Christine being out there. So they commitment to give me a budget to hire part-timers.
Well, that apple didn't fall far from the tree.
No, it didn't. We are very lucky that she wanted to join us here and continue the IGO tradition right down the line.
There you go. And you mentioned about the sports. It was wonderful coverage of the Foxborough High School girls making it to the dance and getting through. And that was, pleasant to read about. And then you have some old standbys, potholes,
potholes every year. We've got to do potholes.
And then things going on at the high school.
Yeah, we try to keep up with the schools and the high school.
And these are the things that, I'm not going to call myself a news junkie, but I certainly am a Foxborough fan, and I love having these things to read about. And even in Boston Globe, the big Boston Globe, well, there's maybe a paragraph of coverage on a local event, or maybe there's a dabble in there, the Globe South weekly, and then the Globe South on Thursdays that come out. So you get one paragraph about Foxborough. If our town hall submits their piece, which they sometimes do and sometimes don't do. And then if there's an actual story, it's usually a story about something going on. Our dearly moved on town manager, that garnered a good bit of ink. Yes. But there's nothing really about Foxborough. And truly, and forgive me, I write my own words about things. But if you're looking for local coverage, the Globe absolutely doesn't have it.
Well, that's our franchise.
And nor do they pretend
to. However, in the future, we are able to deliver it, whether it's online, in print, which is increasingly difficult, we feel that our franchise is the local news. The Boston Globe, they cover too many towns. They can't do that.
And they don't even do Boston.
And
it's
you
news.
don't read them for Foxborough news. You read them because you want to find out world, state, whatever, good sports section, entertainment. So we've held this franchise. The Foxboro Reporter is in its 130th year of existence from, when it started originally here. And, we feel very protective of that in that sense. We want to continue that.
And this has truly been a local papers going back to the Foxborough Company when it was actually.
Yep.
And in fact, my Uncle George, I don't know if you know this.
I did not know this.
My Uncle George used to run the press back in the, I think it was early 50s. Uncle Patrick, if I got that wrong, please don't call the station. Please. The other piece of it, though, is as you dabbled into online presence, the Foxboro Reporter is available at www.foxbororeporter.com.
Yes.
Spelled the company way, not the old way.
Yes.
And it is currently a free service.
It is. And we want people to be able to look at it and see it. We obviously don't want people to get, not everything is online, including a lot of the pictures. We don't want people to think, well, I can get it for free. I don't need to buy a paper. We obviously want you to buy a paper.
But there is much more in this than what's online. And I think that's one of the, it's my Thursday ritual. I go into Cumberland Farms and I get my paper. And
good for you.
Part of it is because I know that you also have the subscription service. And so for people who want to subscribe to the Foxboro Reporter, they can just call the office up.
Anytime,
at 508.
Basically 9 to 2:30 or so when
at
Ruth is
508-543.
4851.
4851. And they can also do it right on. There's a link right off the website.
It doesn't always work as well, but there is. But exactly, we'll
And
promote
then
the product here.
And then the subscription, it comes out through the United States mail.
Yes, it's delivered by mail, which
And it comes out same day?
it comes out. Yes, we print it on
Excellent.
Wednesday nights. So my press time is like 6 o'clock, and we print it, and then it's packaged and delivered to the post office on Thursday morning, and then the good folks down at the post office, who now often have to sort carrier routes and everything, give a good shout out to them, because they have done a lot of work to try to get it to everybody on time.
Well, I was going to say that's an incredible story in and of itself, and that you have this partnership with the local post office and paper boys, and I don't know if there's any such thing as a paper boy anymore, but
There really
local
isn't.
delivery, and this comes out on the day it's printed. So
Yes,
for people who are looking to get a subscription, it would be real time. It's not a day delay. So that's important also. And I know there's also significant discounts that are offered to seniors.
And we have a 2-year, 3-year, you can sign up long term, you can pay a little less.
And it also makes a
Off
great
the
gift for
newsstand
those
price.
friends who are expats
Exactly.
who left Foxborough, but keep
Exactly.
it first and foremost in their hearts, right?
There you go. You're doing a great job promoting the paper.
Well,
and read Bob Hickey, please.
You know. Well, part of it, though, is it's important to recognize, as you said, that newspapers are not nonprofit organizations. And I've heard so often, I can't believe so-and-so did this. And I was like, well, then what have you done? Did you contribute a story? Well, no, they should just cover it. Well, no, they shouldn't just cover it. They need to, and I'm not even going to say incentivize, because that's the wrong word, but they have to know about it. And it's news gathering is something I don't know anything about, but I'm going to try to throw you a softball here. News gathering, how does this happen? You just magically wake up and you look at the agenda for the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board and you say, hey, this is where we're going this week.
So, sometimes we joke, in the business, that people think we're clairvoyant, and they'll call up and say, why didn't you cover this? And our answer is usually because nobody told us that it was going on. We'd be happy to cover it. But I'm lucky, since I've been here, and I'm not a Foxborough resident, live next door in Walpole. But I certainly know Foxborough well from that angle. But I'm lucky in that most of the people who work for the paper, who contribute to the paper, live here, are connected to the community. Frank lives here. I've had the chance to follow Jeff Peterson, who lives here and has been invaluable in letting me know things that are going on. Christine, obviously. So we do have a good news gathering organization in the sense that these people hear things, they're around, but we still say, we want you to let us know, because what we don't want to be is just strictly looking at the agenda for a meeting and be a meeting coverage. This is what town officials said. We look for a little more. I think, Frank did a nice job this week because he went and talked to Vicki Lowe, and she'd been presenting her things to the advisory committee and what have you. But if we just covered the meeting, it's a little dry. If you go and talk to Vicki, and then he talked to Deb Spinelli, and he talked to Dick Haydecker, and tried to get 3 different angles on this issue of the percentage of seniors growing in town. So I think a lot of that in news gathering, as I say, I give Frank a lot of credit for getting out there and finding this stuff.
And of course, you're referring to the front page story and about the current budget process. And one of the interesting things with that is, and of course, I'm speaking with Bill Stedman, who is the editor of the Foxboro Reporter. You had mentioned Jeff Peterson, who is your predecessor and who is now the editor of the Sun Chronicle, or what is
he
his
is the
official
publisher.
title? He's the publisher of the
He is
Sun
the
Chronicle.
publisher. Rusty Darconti, who has retired, who was the publisher. And so now Jeff is the publisher for both newspapers. They treat us as a division, so to speak, here,
but
because we're the only two.
Got the local support out there, because Jeff obviously cut his teeth here. And
Jeff knows, and if I have if I've had questions, As publisher, he does his thing. He's not in my office telling me what to cover or anything else. As a publisher should, he's looking at the big picture, but he's been an invaluable resource for me, and tough to follow. I'm following him, and I'm following Jack Othla too.
Well, I was going to say his predecessor is still around. In fact, has been doing such a fantastic job with the
Jack is.
War Between. It's so hard for me to say civil, but the War Between the States series about Company F and the Foxboro regiments, and that's truly been an education. I hope everybody is reading that because
he's come up with some great stuff.
I mean, Jack is always such a dynamic speaker and such a great resource in talking about ethics in media and local press coverage and how to continuing the historical context of every topic. If I ever want to find out anything about
you ask Jack.
When I was looking into supporting work on the Deposit Reservoir, he had all the information about Crack Rock Pond, and he had it up here. So everything is so real when you're talking to Jack Othlet, but then bringing that down to Jeff Peterson, bringing it to you, we have such a continuity.
Exactly, and it's something that our readers are lucky to have compared to a lot of newspapers that I've seen, weekly newspapers, to have that continuity, to have that richness of local information that a lot of papers don't, because they're cutting back, they're hiring kids out of college coming in who do a great job covering the news, and I don't begrudge anybody who wants to go into journalism, although you're not going to make a whole lot of money out of it. But anyway, we do have a very rich group of a lot of knowledge. Not rich in money, but rich in knowledge.
There's so many things I want to talk to you about today, and we are so running out of time. But quickly, how did you end up coming here? How did you get into journalism? You mentioned the new kids coming in, graduating from high school or college, and saying, wow, this would be a great way to earn a living. How did you get to this point?
No, actually, it was a sort of a strange journey. I went to school thinking I would be a marine biologist. Those of us of our generation grew up on Jacques Cousteau. I grew up near the water, so down in Dartmouth, Massachusetts. So loved the ocean, loved boats. Was going to be a marine biologist. But after freshman year, I realized that biology major, the chemistry, the math, and the meantime, I had gotten involved in the newspaper and loved it, and absolutely loved it. So I wound up, by freshman year, I knew journalism was where I was going to go. And once I got out of college, I started at a weekly newspapers up in Wayland, Weston, and Sudbury, and was there for quite a while before the Sun Chronicle hired me.
Excellent. And then from the Sun Chronicle, the opportunity came up here in Foxborough.
Yes, they were looking, because Jeff had been promoted to assistant general manager for the Sun Chronicle and the Foxboro Reporter.
And I think if I remember from at the time, part of that was to try to create a strategy for incorporating the electronic version or an electronic presence.
Yes, Jeff was very much involved in looking ahead, and I was on a committee with him and when I was at the Sun Chronicle, and in trying to figure out how do we keep this thing going, because it's not easy when you lose a lot of your advertising, particularly for newspapers. The classified section, is gone because it's now online. It's Craigslist. It's Auto.com. It's Monster.com, Jobs.com.
Yep.
So that's a big chunk of revenue that newspapers just lost, and so.
And
so
social
Jeff,
media for yard sales and everything, the whole 9 yards.
So Jeff was definitely, that's his challenge. One of his biggest challenges as a publisher of a newspapers is
well, let's talk about that challenges. We talk about going forward and incorporating electronic media. And just recently, we all read about it. There was a competitor, I won't even call it a competitor, but it was an online news service, I guess we'll call it, that recently just 90% of their staff were laid off and whatnot. So even the electronic version is not necessarily, the model is not there for the future, because it's still dependent so much upon the printed shop. But the printed shop is not doing well, and so it's really a time of change in the industry, and I'm not sure where we go.
I think the difference is not between print and online. The difference is your commitment to covering the local news, and I think what you were referring to here, they would hire one kid and basically say 24/7, you've got to cover this town. And I feel bad for the people who did it, and we knew them, we worked with them. It's a tough job, but they didn't get the commitment. They didn't get the budget for correspondence, so they couldn't hire a Christine Igo Freeman to go out there, or Evie Mom, who's done it for many years for us. I have just a number of people, Stephanie Flaherty, who takes photographs, and forgive me if I'm forgetting people, but
it's not an Oscar ceremony. You don't have to thank everybody.
What it is it's a commitment to getting people to get you the news and to do it, and I think they didn't, and they wound up filling a lot of their space with filler material and regional material. And I don't want to go to a website for that. If I'm going to a Foxborough website, I want to know about Foxborough. I go to a Foxborough newspaper. We're all Foxborough. There's no filler in here.
I'm going to give you the last word after we have this piece, but there's so many things I want to talk about. One is talking about the local press and talking about the future and kids coming up. We Foxborough Cable Access and the Foxborough Reporter, just made a renewed commitment with the schools. And
wonderful.
And I think it's going to be a huge win going forward. Debbie Spinelli's done such a wonderful job as our superintendent, and we have recently committed to funding the Warrior Word, which is the student-led newspaper that you publish for everybody in Foxborough, and you give a number of copies to them. But it's a student club with a teacher as a leader, but I think the last few years there's been some wavering of, or maybe just some unsureness as to whether there's going to be an outlet for it. They do the work, but is it going to get published? And I think that this past year, what we've done is we've reassured the school system.
Yes, exactly.
Do whatever you want, and we will make it happen. And Foxborough Cable Access and the Foxborough Reporter came together and said, look, if you kids are going to put this effort in, and you as a school are going to make this an opportunity, we guarantee you that it will be out there. So I'm really excited about that.
The kids are fabulous. I love it. I used to do it at the Sun Chronicle with a teen page, and it's something worth. I'm so glad Foxborough Cable's involved, and it's something worth encouraging, because these kids work hard, and the advisors, and we want to get it out there.
And I think that is the perfect way to end the program, but I just want to say that Foxborough Reporter and Foxborough Cable Access, we are your local news outlets. We cover, of course, locally produced by volunteers, but we provide coverage of meetings live online, also on our website at www.fcatv.org, which is, of course, where you can find other episodes of Foxborough Central. Shameless plug, right?
Yes.
But also, the Foxborough Reporter is our local news source, and along with the Sun Chronicle, if it wasn't for those two papers, we wouldn't have the opportunity to read all about the great things that happen here in Foxborough, because it just wouldn't exist. Bill Steven, my guest, last word.
Last word. We want you to contribute. This is your newspaper. This is not my newspaper. It's not Bob's newspaper. Sometimes it seems that way, but this is your newspaper, and we want everybody to contribute, to send us letters, to tell us they love us, they hate us, whatever. That's what we're here for.
And also here to subscribe, call them up at 508-543-4851, or look them up online at www.foxbororeporter.com. We are so out of time, I can't believe it. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me and my guests here in Foxborough Central. Until next time, take care, Foxborough.